I got shot 3 times at point blank range with a 38 special from a few feet away from me, and I'm still alive talking to you. I have friends who got shot once and they're not alive anymore. So I know just how fortunate I am, for to have made it out of there. I don't think it's because I'm smart or I have any skill that anybody else didn't. I really do attribute it to just good fortune. And that's why I feel so obligated to talk about these things, to be so transparent to the point of making others uncomfortable at times. But these things have to be talked about so that we can stop subjecting the children to these repetitive patterns of behavior.
Excited to reconnect with Moses. Welcome back to a mental health break. Vincent A. Lancy here. Met him at Daryl's event a few months ago. Big shout out to Daryl. We started talking, became friendly, had him on that entrepreneur show. But in that process, I learned a lot about his story, the adversity he's overcome, and some mental health challenges along the way. If you've overcome some trauma with family or are looking to, some bipolar tendencies, and coming up around extreme violence, trying to navigate all that and stay afloat, this is the show for you. Big thank you to today's guest. You see him today if you're viewing on. Moses, thank you so much for joining a mental health break.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity to, share my story and some of the things that have helped me overcome, most importantly.
And I appreciate you having the courage and honesty with me on the last episode, sharing all those things that you've overcome. Everyone, get ready for a great show. He gave it all from the heart on his first show on that entrepreneur show, and I expect him to do the same today. Let's go back to growing up, trying to be a kid, navigating some family trauma when one side of the family is completely different from the other side of the family. Let's talk about how all that affected you.
Well, I often I often felt like I was from another planet. Because, you know, I had a very idealistic mindset. I've just been a blind optimist all my life. I did not want my childhood to end, and I was in an environment that wasn't necessarily conducive to that. A lot of my friends in elementary school were already beginning to participate in criminal activity and all of these types of things, and I did my best to resist, the environment I was around to the point that I was more or less just a weirdo. I was the little nerdy weirdo kid in the community. But at some point, the stuff that's going on outside, the pull gets too strong.
And the temptation is strong, the pull gets strong, but you have to find a way to weather that. And you certainly did a great job at that. When did you first notice some kind of mental health challenge for the very first time?
Well, I observed it from the outside. I could see some of my family members um, just living a life of a lot of cognitive dissonance. The things that they preach are not the way that they live. And you see how that split affects their own perception of themselves. And then they self-medicate to make up for the difference. So where I'm from, a lot of the mental health is simply expressed in, no one is sober. Everyone is drinking and doing drugs every day of the week to varying degrees. The pill poppers think they're better than the crackheads. This and it even goes to the point of I've seen some people do it with religion, where religion becomes that drug that gives them an escape so that they don't have to deal with their reality and just makes them feel like they're better than everyone else who's in this environment suffering the same way.
That temporary hold on what's going on is what you're describing, but you chose not to go that way. And like we shared before the show, he was born a meditator, he described. I'd love to dive a little bit into that, I guess, from your earliest times trying meditation.
Well, it wasn't called meditation back then. It was just called Moses is Weird. I've always been drawn to water, bodies of water, and I've always just wanted to sit there and look at it and breathe. And it's always calmed me, whether it's a lake, a pond, the beach. I mean, the beach is, of course, number one, but just bodies of water have always drawn me from the time I was a little kid. And I always needed time to myself. And it wasn't that I didn't watch TV all the time. I just like to sit in thought and sometimes not in thought and just be present. And they'd come and say, Moses, what are you doing in here? Why are you just sitting in this room? And I'm like, I'm just I'm just sitting. I don't do I always have to be doing something? And they're like, you're just weird. And they'd slam the door and then I'd come out and I'd feel better. And yeah, that's
I
where I was.
I I got that in the show notes from go out. The power of sitting with your thoughts. You have to have that time for reflection, or you can't improve. It's always a challenge for people to make that transition. Change is the scariest thing, but it's also the only constant in life. If nothing changes, nothing changes. We all can improve some way, somewhere, and that was a little motivation there. Let's now talk about some of those meditation practices that we were talking about on that entrepreneur show. Let's give everybody some free advice.
Well, there's a lot of different translations and interpretations of meditation. The one that I like to run with is meditation means to be present, to simply be present. And whether we realize it or not, we're all meditators. We all meditate at times. We're just not conscious of it. But when you're working out and
Just
you're
gonna say, yeah.
totally locked in to that next rep, trying to get that bench up off your chest, at that moment, you are not thinking about the past or the future or what could go wrong. You are locked in that activity. You are present, you know. Walking meditations are one of my favorite. That moment of, oh man, so much going on. I just need to go for a walk. You're meditating.
Did it
You
three
know,
times today already. It's been a stressful
yeah,
one. I've been
yeah. And
outside.
I mean, there are meditations where you empty your mind and that is the goal. And there's also meditations where you allow your mind to do what it needs to do and you are still present. You can be, they call it the witness, right? You are sitting behind your mind, observing all the activities,
I
observing
like
the
that.
and the thing. I can't take credit for that. I didn't invent that. That's John Singer. Um, but yeah, living in the seat of the witness, where you sit back and your mind is going crazy, and you're like, "Huh, isn't this interesting? Look at these thoughts that are going by. Look at the emotions I'm feeling because of the stimuli." But
Right.
knowing that I am not those emotions, I am not those thoughts. I am, I am space. I am spirit. And this is just the activities of the mind because the mind is not the only thing that occupies spirit. Um, and so I've just spent a lot of time just going deeper and deeper, studying different religions, different ways of doing it, every religion, every spiritual practice references meditation in some form or another. And I believe that there's something we can learn from all of them.
I agree with you there. The learning never stops, and will at least give you that new perspective, something you weren't thinking of like you were. And I love how you highlighted there the meditative states. There's different type of meditation. For some, they can sit still, but he's talking about the gym, which is one of my favorite meditative states when you're just locked in, you're not thinking about anything. Oh man, I on that area with the gym and the mental health. I feel I get more mental health benefits from a workout or a walk, a bike ride than physical benefits. Would you agree with that?
I would 100% agree with that. I am under the I've come to very few finite conclusions, but one finite conclusion that no one can debate with me on is that the mind is everything. The mind creates all reality. Without your mind could convince you that you're not here. Your mind could convince you that there's a voice speaking to you that's not there, and no one would be able to tell you any different. Your mind could convince you that next year you're going to be a billionaire, and you could make all of those things happen simply from the power of the mind. So, the mental aspect of everything that we do is more important than the physical aspect if we are able to tap into that because there's additional benefits to be unlocked just by directing the mind along with the body. like especially when you're lifting weights. When your mind is locked in on that perfect form, when you are nowhere else, when you've been taking care of yourself, you're not bringing your stresses in, you get more reps out of that than you would think that you're capable of. And your body hasn't done anything different. Your mind unlocked that additional capability.
The power of the mindset, it's everything. And without feeling good upstairs, you're probably not going to perform well in whatever you're doing. While we're on this topic, let's keep diving into this. Other things we got. We have the power of self-talk, giving ourselves the right thoughts, being grateful, practicing that. What are some other things that you incorporate? I know you're a successful guy in the business world, but you also prioritize mental health, which I love about you.
Well, you just touched on the most important one, which is gratitude.
Mm.
When all else fails, gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. And you always have something to be grateful for, because if you can contemplate and you can think, that means you're alive. And that in and of itself is a miracle. The human body, the human mind, the fact that we're on this ball of rock and water and fire suspended in the middle of nothingness at the perfect distance from the sun to give us warmth and the perfect distance from the moon to give us gravity to keep, it's a never-ending miracle. Be grateful, that you're in the small number of all the humans who have existed, who gets to be here at this very moment. And gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. Joy to me is composed of gratitude. You do not have to have things or success to have joy. You only have to have gratitude. And that makes space for all the physical three-dimensional things.
Mhm.
But if you can't be grateful for the miracles you're already given, you're not going to be a good steward of additional blessings and things to be grateful for, which is why you don't magnetize it, why it doesn't come to you, because you're not a good steward of your life if you can't live in a state of gratitude, or at least try to. No one's perfect. And just today I was preparing for this talk about meditation and all these things I was going to impress on everyone else. And I had my own struggles today of just keeping that positive mental state. And even though, okay, this is going wrong, this is going wrong, this is going wrong, it's a blessing to be at this place for those things to go wrong.
Said
I
that
prayed
perfect.
about getting here where I am now.
Hey, thanks for sharing that and just that positive outlook on everything. Every day for me in the morning starts with prayer and what I'm grateful for, and those things that push me into the next part of the morning. We could do a whole nother show on morning routines, because I know you have to have a solid one too. Everyone, stay tuned for that entrepreneur show. Will be coming out probably early fall, I think his episode is, and that's going to talk about him running successful lending business, him having a VA business, and everything in between. But as this episode has showed you, and I hope it's inspiring you, take care of upstairs before anything else, because that will lead to success in other areas. Before we get him out of here, though, I want to now switch back to something we didn't talk about yet. Growing up around violence and all these things, we talked about self-medicating and how that impacts mental health. You were a firsthand witness on that. You learned from that and you vowed to change things. How did it affect your mental health growing up around violence?
Um, it definitely affected me. Initially, I tried to keep on my rose-colored glasses and just block it out, and like a lot of children do. You
Yeah.
know, you just want to see the best in everyone and see the best in every situation, and then you reach a point where it's just knocking on your door and you can't run from it anymore. And then most of us, myself included, we fall in line. We assimilate
Yeah.
so that we can be accepted and not have to be the weird guy anymore. And then, anything I do, I'm going to be great at it. So when it was time to be no good, I was great at being no good. But the entire time I knew that wasn't me. I was living my own cognitive dissonance at that time, participating in those criminal activities and just all those things I was doing as a child. And I consider myself to be very fortunate, very blessed, and
Yeah.
now I'm realizing I feel like I've kind of some people would call them guardian angels, some people would call them ancestors. But somehow I always knew when to go home. There was
Yeah.
always a voice in my ear saying, Moses, this is about to go too far. Get out of here. And I knew whose car not to get in. I knew I would listen to those voices. So I was able to, I'm the only person I grew up with, more or less, who's never been to prison. And I've never even been to jail. And everybody else has. You know, it's part of the normal progression in that environment. Um, so with that in mind, I just have to say that I know that I'm blessed. I'm not the norm. I'm lucky. I'm extremely lucky. I got shot 3 times at point blank range with a 38 special from a few feet away from me, and I'm still alive talking to you. I have friends who got shot once, and they're not alive anymore. So I know just how fortunate I am, you know, to have made it out of there. I don't think it's because I'm smart or I have any skill that anybody else didn't. I really do attribute it to just good fortune. And that's why I feel so obligated to talk about these things, to be so transparent to the point of making others uncomfortable at times. But these things have to be talked about so that we can stop subjecting the children to these repetitive patterns of behavior.
I love your outlook on life. It's inspiring to me, and just your ability to recognize how fortunate you are. You're saying that you've seen all these things happen around you, and now look at where you are. Everyone out there, be proud of how far you come. None of us are going to have the same path, the same journey. It's not a cookie cutter life. You have to just see the hand you're dealt and react to that. He made it go either way, and I'm sure the world would be missing you if you didn't go this way because of all the great work you're doing in your communities, I know, in your businesses. With that, I got to thank you so much for encouraging the uncomfortable conversations, for inspiring us to use our story and keep moving forward. And of course, you inspired a lot of people, I hope, listening on to get started with some meditation. And if you're like me, that meditative state comes in exercise and it's big time. We look forward to it, even on the bike. The bike meditative state is a good one too. But if you're here in Florida, you better get out there before 8 a.m. or you're going to be cooking. Moses, where can people say hi to you online? Where can they find you online?
You can find me on Instagram at Moses_Alford Lending and on Facebook as just Moses Alford. Twitter is Moses_Alford Lending. But you know, I'm very transparent. I love having conversations about these types of topics. So don't be a stranger. Please, you know, connect with me.
You heard the man. Go ahead and reach out. I want to thank everyone for tuning in or listening in to another episode of A Mental Health Break. I continue to have such a great time hosting this show because for me, it's really a therapy session every time I put on the headset or have the mic. We're here on A Mental Health Break, just giving our stories back to help you, the listeners. So I hope you found value with it, and I hope you'll come back to see us again next week. The show is at A Mental Health Break on all podcast platforms. And of course, we're on social media too. I'm at Vincent A. Lancy everywhere. Be sure to check me out on YouTube to check out some video clips from this show a few weeks after it goes live. But with that, we are signing off. Both of us in Tampa this time. Moses, thanks a lot for your time, man.
You're very, very welcome. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to actually listen. I hope someone got some benefit from this, and I look forward to doing it again. Thank you for having me.
Of course, man. Keep up the great work.